Welcome back to Things You Don't Know, the show where history meets science, culture, and popular entertainment. Today, we're looking at Black Panther. Yeah, one of the most important superheroes created during the 20th century. Many people first encountered the character through the Marvel films, but T'Challa's history reaches back more than half a century.
Oh, yes, it does. His importance goes beyond having an unusual costume or advanced technology. When Black Panther appeared in 1966, nearly every major superhero in American comic books was white. Black characters were often missing entirely, placed in minor supporting roles, or portrayed through stereotypes.
Then Marvel introduced an African king who was also a scientist, strategist, warrior, diplomat, and superhero. He ruled a nation that was wealthier and more technologically advanced than the Western countries that usually dominated adventure stories.
We'll examine why that introduction was so significant, where Wakanda comes from, how T'Challa's powers work, and how later writers transformed that character.
And we also need to address the name Black Panther. The superhero appeared almost exactly the same historical moment as the Black Panther political organizations of the civil rights and Black Power era.
The character was not named after the Oakland Black Panther Party, which was founded after his comic book debut. However, the complete story is more complicated than saying the similarity was merely a coincidence.
Yeah, Black Panther first appeared in Fantastic Four number 52, published in July 1966. He was created by the writer Stan Lee and artist Jack Kirby. We just seem to keep running into those guys, don't we, Dr. Deneen?
We do. They've done and are responsible for some really wonderful things.
Major contributions to the superhero and comic book franchises.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely. Now,
absolutely.
Black Panther is generally recognized as the first black superhero introduced by a mainstream major American comic book publisher. There had been black characters in the comics before him, including a few heroic figures in smaller publications, but none had been given this kind of position in the rapidly growing mainstream superhero world.
Now, we need to pause here because it's very important that we describe him correctly here. T'Challa is actually African. He's not African American. No, he's African. He is the ruler of the fictional African nation Wakanda. Now, Marvel would later introduce major African American heroes such as the Falcon, Luke Cage, Blade, and Monica Rambeau, but he is not African American. He is African.
T'Challa's first appearance immediately established him as someone exceptional. He invited the Fantastic Four to Wakanda and then defeated them individually as part of a carefully designed test.
That was a very important choice. Black Panther was not introduced as a beginner who needed white superheroes to train him, much less rescue him. He was already capable of defeating one of Marvel's most powerful teams.
That's right. And he also possessed authority that didn't come from joining an American organization. He was a king, the protector of his country, and he was one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, for Black readers in 1966, seeing a Black character presented with that level of intelligence, dignity, power, and independence was unusual. For white readers, T'Challa challenged many of the racial assumptions that had been repeated in comics, films, and adventure stories. Black Panther is widely regarded as the first black superhero in mainstream American comics, and Marvel dates his first appearance to July 1966.
Now we come to the obvious historical question here. Did Marvel name its superhero after the Black Panther Party, Dr. Deneen?
The Oakland founding organization, officially known as the Black Panther Party for Self Defense, was founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale in October of 1966. T'Challa's first published appearance came in July, several months earlier. Therefore, Marvel could not have named the character after that particular organization.
Yeah, however, the Black Panther symbol was already part of civil rights politics before the Marvel character appeared.
In 1965, black residents and members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, helped create the Lowndes County Freedom Organization in Alabama. That organization selected a Black Panther as its symbol on the ballot.
And that symbol represented an animal that normally avoided conflict but would defend itself when threatened. Sort of like I won't start anything, but I sure will finish it. The Lowndes County organization was sometimes informally called the Black Panther Party, and its symbol helped inspire the name and imagery that was later adopted by the Oakland organization.
There was an even earlier use of the name. During World War II, the predominantly black 761st Tank Battalion was known as the Black Panthers. The unit fought in Europe while the United States military was still segregated.
General George Patton called them the finest soldiers he'd ever known. So the words Black Panther already carried association with black strength, military courage, political independence, and self-defense. The animal itself had also appeared in Pulp Fiction, military insignia, sports nicknames, and other popular imagery.
Now, there is no firm documentary evidence proving that Lee and Kirby directly borrowed the superhero's name from the Lowndes County organization, the Tank Battalion, or another political group. The creators offered different accounts of how the character developed.
The most accurate conclusion is that the Marvel character was not named after the Oakland Black Panther Party. At the same time, calling the similarity a completely meaningless coincidence ignores the wider culture of 1965 and 1966.
Different groups were choosing the same animal because the panther suggested power, dignity, caution, and the willingness to defend itself. The superhero and the political movement emerged separately, but they emerged during the same period of intense discussion about black identity and black power.
Marvel eventually became nervous about the political association. In a 1972 story, T'Challa briefly began calling himself the Black Leopard to avoid what the comic described as political connotations.
The change did not last. Black Leopard lacked the force and recognition of the original name, and Marvel soon returned to Black Panther.
Before Marvel settled on Black Panther, one of Jack Kirby's earliest concept designs used the name Coal Tiger. I'm glad they didn't pick that.
Yeah, I am too, Dr. Deneen.
I agree that it just doesn't have the punch. It doesn't have the mm,
Doesn't have a catchy ring to it, does it?
no.
No. Now, that name would have probably not had the same dignity or the same lasting appeal. It also placed more emphasis on color and exoticism than the character's position as a ruler and protector.
Yeah, the finished Black Panther costume was also changed before publication. An early design exposed part of T'Challa's face, while the published version used a full mask.
The final name and costume made him more visually mysterious, but readers soon learned that the person behind the mask was far more important than the disguise.
Black Panther was groundbreaking, but Wakanda was equally important.
For generations, Western films, novels, and comics have frequently portrayed Africa as primitive, helpless, or dependent upon European explorers. African characters were often shown as servants, enemies, or just anonymous crowds.
Wakanda reversed that pattern. It was an independent African kingdom that had protected its territory, maintained its traditions, and developed technology far beyond that of Europe or the United States.
Now, its development was made possible partly by vibranium, an extremely rare fictional metal found in a meteorite that landed in the region. Wakandans learned to use it for medicine, transportation, communications, weapons, and energy systems. Pass a little bit of that my way, Doctor Weaver.
Yeah, good luck on that,
Yeah,
since it's fictional.
yeah.
Wakanda also raised a powerful historical question. What might an African country have become if it had escaped the slave trade, colonial occupation, and the foreign removal of its natural resources?
The earliest comics did not always escape the language and visual stereotypes of the 1960s. However, the central idea was still radical. This supposedly isolated African nation understood advanced science better than the Western visitors who arrived inspecting to instruct it.
And there are also interesting literary parallels.
Uh huh.
Yes, sir. In the 1930s, black journalist and novelist George Schuyler published the serials, later collected as Black Empire. They described black scientists using advanced technology to overturn the European control of Africa.
Yeah, we should be careful here. There is no established evidence that Lee and Kirby directly adapted Schuyler's story when creating Wakanda.
But Schuyler's work was very popular in the so called pulp community, and it shows that black writers were imagining technologically powerful and politically independent African societies decades before Marvel introduced Wakanda. We discuss Schuyler and Black Empire in greater detail in our episode called Bizarre Alliances. Check that out.
Yeah, if you haven't already, do that. Now, where do his physical abilities come from, Dr. Weaver?
Well, T'Challa undergoes years of combat, intellectual, and leadership training. He also consumes a sacred heart shaped herb while earning the right to become Black Panther.
Now, that herb enhances his strength, speed, agility, senses, endurance, and reflexes. Later stories connect the ritual closely with Bast, the panther goddess honored in Wakandian tradition.
I think it's also important to point out here that the herb does not turn him into some kind of unstoppable being, invincible man. He can be injured, exhausted, and he can even be defeated. Much of his effectiveness comes from training, judgment, preparation, and technology.
That combination is quite important. Black Panther is physically enhanced, but his mind remains his greatest advantage.
It's important to remember that T'Challa is one of Marvel's leading scientists, engineers, and strategic thinkers.
And that's why people sometimes compare him to Batman. Both characters rely on preparation, specialized equipment, observation, and the ability to predict an opponent's behavior. See our Batman podcast for more on him.
There are also major differences. T'Challa is the ruler of a technologically advanced country. He has access to scientific institutions, natural resources, intelligence networks, and diplomatic authority that no private crime fighter possesses.
He has designed advanced equipment, studied unusual forms of physics, investigated alternate realities, and developed plans for confronting beings far more powerful than himself.
And his caution can make him appear secretive or suspicious. He sometimes prepares defenses against people who are officially his allies.
From T'Challa's perspective, however, a king cannot assume that powerful individuals will always remain friendly, stable, or under control.
So always keep your guard up, right, Dr. Weaver?
Yeah, make sure you have your boundaries set.
Absolutely. Black Panther's enemies frequently represent threats to either his family or his country.
Yeah, Ulysses Claw, usually spelled Klaw in the comics, is closely connected to attempts to steal Wakandan vibranium. He is one of T'Challa's oldest recurring enemies.
Eric Killmonger, what a name, presents a different challenge. He is not merely attempting to rob Wakanda. He disputes T'Challa's leadership and argues that Wakanda's power should be used more openly and more aggressively.
Now, Doctor Doom is another dangerous opponent because he is also a ruler, scientist, strategist, and armored combatant. A confrontation between Doom and T'Challa becomes a contest between two highly intelligent monarchs.
The strongest Black Panther villains do more than attack him physically. They challenge his ideas about leadership, tradition, isolation, justice, and responsibility.
Although Black Panther remained an important Marvel character, for some time he did not always receive consistent attention after his introduction.
That changed significantly when writer Christopher Priest began a new series in 1998.
Priest emphasized T'Challa's intelligence, political influence, strategic thinking, and the ability to remain several steps ahead of both enemies and allies.
He also gave Wakanda more political depth. Stories involved diplomacy, economic pressure, espionage, internal divisions, and conflicts between T'Challa's responsibilities as king and his activities in the United States.
Later writers, including Reginald Hudlin and Ta-Nehisi Coates, continued expanding Wakanda's history and examining the limits of monarchy, tradition, and national power.
Now, the modern version of Black Panther is therefore the result of many creators. Lee and Kirby established the foundation, but later writers and artists greatly expanded the character and his world.
Yeah, Black Panther reached an enormous new audience when Chadwick Boseman played T'Challa in Captain America Civil War in 2016.
Now, I am going to take a moment here and say, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. He is deeply missed.
Here, here.
The, the solo film Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler, followed in 2018. It combines superhero action with questions about colonialism, isolation, historical injustice, national responsibility, and the relationship between Africans and the African diaspora.
That movie was extremely successful. It earned approximately 1.35 billion with a B dollars worldwide. It also became the first superhero film nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture.
It received seven Academy Award nominations and won three for costume design, production design, and original score.
The cultural reaction was just as important as the financial success. Audiences saw a major film centered on black heroes, black political leaders, black scientists, and powerful black women.
The movie itself did not make Black Panther historically important. The character had already been important since 1966. What the movie did was finally give that history a worldwide platform.
Yeah, Black Panther was not simply another superhero added to Marvel's growing collection of characters.
He was the first black superhero to occupy a major position in mainstream American comics. He appeared as a ruler, scientist, strategist, and defender at a time when black characters were routinely excluded or stereotyped.
Or minimized too, you know?
Absolutely.
Very much so minimized, Dr. Weaver. I have to agree with that. His name also places him within a remarkable historical moment. The marble character, the Lowndes County political symbol, and the Oakland Black Panther Party did not have the same origin, but they reflected a period when the image of the Black Panther had become associated with strength, dignity, and self defense.
Wakanda challenged old portrayers of Africa by imagining a nation that had maintained its independence and surpassed the rest of the world technologically.
Later writers gave that nation greater complexity by asking what it means to possess enormous wealth and power while much of the outside world continues to suffer.
And that combination of historical importance, political conflict, scientific imagination, and personal responsibility explains why Black Panther remains such an influential character today.
Yes, indeedy. Listen, thanks for listening to Things You Don't Know. Please give the episode a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and return for another story from history and popular culture.
Be sure to leave a like and a comment, folks, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.